Hey everybody. Timia once again here from Muse Medicina. All right, so quick go to. I did my Thursday Thunder reading. I had to cut my little platica short because I kept talking and I missed a patient, but I got that, so that was fine. On coping and addiction. So I was about to go into coping because basically the message came through the cards that there was a lot of too much smoke happening as I smoke, but too much internal smoke happening. And then somebody was like, well, what smoking what? And my answer about what, it doesn't really matter. Of course, the different constituents of the plants, etc., will have different effects based on all different kinds of things, but the quality of hot, dry, hot, dry, hot, dry, hot, dry going into the lungs over and over and over again, which is supposed to be a cool, wet mucous membrane, is going to have a deleterious effect or be potentially pathological over a long period of time. Just like if you eat too much sugar over a long period of time, etc. Say hi, Hitos. This is mi Centeo Cali, mi hermoso corazón. Okay, so coping. Somebody then asked, after I explained that, asked, well, how do you cope? So I want to talk about coping or talk about addiction and talk about how basically we need to, where that comes from. So I talk a lot about colonialism. I'm the daughter of colonization. Sorry if my son's distracting you from paying attention, but y'all could watch it later. He distracts me all the time with his darling cute. I'm sure I'm biased when he's like, oh my god. His face helps me cope. When colonialism happened, one of the first things they do is they take away any deep connection to something, to kind of strip you of your meaning, of your purpose in life, and then they can replace that with whatever the power structure decides or defines, right? So oh good, he's teaching you, I'm glad. As we remember what colonialism did to us in our bodies, as all people, and I even talk about the colonization of old Europe, which was basically the witch hunts and the industrialization there. Take away your God, take away your dances, take away your language, take away your ceremonies, take away your plant medicine, take you away from the earth that you're used to stewarding, etc. And then you are pretty much left empty. You're left with these big holes. So I was trying to title this and it wouldn't let me. There's this idea of filling the void. So in one of the ancient Chinese medicine texts, I read once, the heart is a void. And you're trying to fill it. So when we're smoking or when we're drinking or when we are substancing, got it. We are trying to fill the void.
Is that what you think about filling the void, buddy?
Or we are trying to get out what got stuffed down because there's righteous anger, there's righteous pain, right? So actually, I think it's perfect that Majito is in here right now because when we're children, we don't have filters, right? We learn our filters. Thank you. We learn our filters by getting punished when we express ourselves. Oh, con cuidado, mijito. Are you okay? He just banged himself on my knee. So kids start learning really young when not to speak, when not to express, what not to do. I try very intently not to filter him and not to stifle his expression, so that he doesn't get like wounded in a certain way. But if you go back and you look at colonialism and this, like, my grandma used to tell me all the time, "State quieta," which I'm pretty sure meant like shut up or don't be loud or don't be too present, right? So we learn all of these things from this intergenerational silencing of our songs, silencing of our dance, silencing of the dogs playing too. This is great. A silencing of our full selves. And when we silence our full selves, there's a couple things that happen. One, we're not releasing like this deep anger, pain, frustration. And two, we are left empty. And when I say empty, I mean there's a certain purpose that if we're back in the day in our village, you have to wake up and you have to go get the water and you have to make the fire or else you won't have food or water, right? So there's like all of this purpose in our everyday activities, and we wake up and we give gratitude and we give thanks and we thank the sun for coming, etc. So when we are without our practices, when the cis hetero white supremacist patriarchy takes us away from our birthers the moment that we're born, and pokes us up and stabs us up and pathologizes us and gives us not our mother's milk from the beginning, we're left with something that we can't fill. And if you look at that intergenerationally, that looks like a lot of empty. What I would equate to Marxist theory, or the alienation of the work of our hands. So for those of you who have had a job that's like soul sucking, it's like, it doesn't matter what you do, you're there for the man, okay? Our ancestors who were living for our own wellness, for our own thriving, for our own connection to the great and each other, weren't experiencing anything that was soul sucking for the most part. So we have to understand the etiology or the cause behind what is going on. Anybody with an addiction is not suffering from the addiction. It's not cocaine, it's not heroin, it's not alcohol, it's not marijuana, it's not Percocet. It's before the Percocet, okay? It's the mama issues, it's the daddy issues, it's the abandonment issues, it's the not belonging issues, it's the I don't fit in issues, it's the no sé qué, whatever it is. Like, it could be all of these different things, but it doesn't, the root is not the substance. The substance is a symptom. The addiction is a symptom of the underlying pathology, and I'm saying the underlying pathology is colonialism. It's the alienation from the work of your hands. It's the alienation from the body that birthed you. It's the mother wound. It's the boarding schools. It's the slavery. Okay, these are the things, and this is why addictions are so endemic in BIPOC. Bi meaning Black, Indigenous meaning the heirs, the descendants of the formerly enslaved, and the descendants of the genocided upon in the United States of America, what is now called the United States of America. Okay, this is not just an American issue. Okay, this happened in Brazil and Jamaica. It's the colonial thievery of our own selves from ourselves. And that is the underpinning problem, which is what we are all trying to fill, if that makes sense. Okay, so thing is, we're all dealing with this, right? All of us, every single one of us, even like the whitest of the white person with the whitest upbringing has suffered a loss of self, because when the all the different types of Europeans came over, they were just white. There's so much history. My mom and I are going to be doing a history class. She's a historian. Hiya. Next Wednesday. What is this do? Next Wednesday at 2 p.m. Here you go. He knows what he wants. Also, I breastfeed on demand because this is part of offering him what he needs. I also want to say this, which is crazy, and my lover taught me this. Like, breastfeeding hella alters him, right? It's definitely drugs. Breast milk is definitely drugs. Like, that milk drunk thing is real. So my love was like, now I know that people were enjoying altered states. You know, like, because breast milk is straight up altering. Like, honestly, I don't know how birthers don't breastfeed. The way my breast milk calms him down, chills him out. It's amazing what human biology will do. So that's a whole other conversation that we can add on to this whole thing about altered states. So that's another thing. In the ceremonies that our ancestors were doing, if any of you have been blessed enough to come into contact with any of these ceremonies with visionary medicines, there's an entire dance that happens between you and the unseen realm, between you and the godly realms, between you and the plant cesters and the ancestors. And these are intended altered states for our opening of certain doors in our ability to connect to the great, to the stars, to the ancestral beings. And that was all taken away from us during colonialism. Okay, and even now, there are people who practice certain ways, but colonialism definitely did a lot. You want to go to Papa and play with your car?
Oh, you're over there. Your car's over there.
Your car's over there.
Want to go to your new car? 3, 2, 1.
Okay, so somebody asked me on the last live, how do I cope? And there are a lot of ways one could cope. So a lot of people smoke weed, a lot of people smoke cigarettes, a lot of people binge watch television, a lot of people fuck, right? There are a lot of ways for coping or distracting from the deep wounding of our loss, whatever that is, whether that's mama or daddy or colonialism or partnership or abandonment, etc. It's a childhood wound, right? It's an ancestral wound as well. So I define coping as distracting from the deep shadow work of our healing. Okay, hi Mona, long time. I define coping as distracting from the deep shadow work of our healing. Okay, so those of you who know this, and I'm one who knows this, I am no angel. I've had all of my different kinds of addictions. I'm grateful that I was raised in a community that was full puros marihuanos, and we were raised. My mom lived during when a lot of our Chicano brothers and sisters, or mostly brothers in this neighborhood that I live in now, came back from Vietnam, strung out on heroin. She was like 12 when that started happening, so she raised us like we were driving around going, she'd be like, Hita, that's a crackhead. You don't want to be like that. You see that? That's alcoholism. Alcohol will kill you. My mom was like straight up, I mean, growing up in the hood, you knew what a crackhead looked like, what a heroin addict looked like, and what an alcoholic looked like. You could tell the three from each other, and you knew that that's not what you wanted to be. But but smoking weed was seen differently. So I grew up smoking a lot of weed. And then when I lived in China, weed was super illegal, so I started smoking tobacco, and so then I got addicted to tobacco, and that was intense. But always when I'm like stressed out, right? So if you think about filling the void, and you're filling because you're missing something, at the same time there's an excess going on because you're feeling this rabia, this ansia, this I want to fucking punch something on my Boston face, but I fucking can't, so you stuff it down. The act of smoking or drinking is a continual, literal repression of what needs to, okay? So Chinese medicine is really straightforward and qualitative. And so like burping and coughing and choking, we call rebellious qi. It's a form of spewing out what you no longer need. So if you are not allowing your body to release what it needs to release, it's going to do it in other weird ways. Migraines, bloodshot eyes, mouth sores, etc. Add toxicity to the mix. I digress. There's so much to talk about in here. So let me bring it back to like coping mechanisms. Coping mechanisms happen when our shit is literally about to come out, but we're scared to let it come out. We are systematized, habituated to stuff it down. So then we imbibe or we smoke, okay? Instead of getting frustrated and being like, why am I frustrated? I'm frustrated because that car won't move. No, but really you're impatient. Why are you impatient? What do you have to do? And then you keep asking yourself these questions, and then you realize that there's some deep down a little child who needed to hurry up or they'd get beat. Okay? And this is the depth of the wounding that we're stuffing down. It's never the person in front of you that made you impatient. It's always some old shit. Okay? And this could be ancestral as well. So add to that the descendants of the genocided upon and formerly enslaved. And you've got all of this ancestral anger and pain and etc. that needs to come out, so you're stuffing it down. All right. So this person asked me what my coping mechanisms are, and because I'm trying to be honest with y'all, I'm going to be. I didn't grow up in a safe home. And I realized that when abuse was happening in my home, what I would do is play make-believe. So I would play dress up a lot. So part of my personal coping mechanism has to do with dressing up and playing. So it's very fantasy-like, it's very childlike, and so I'm going to show you what I mean. I got a tutu, I got a tutu, and then I dance in my room and with my baby, and we dance, and we do, and I play on my oh, look, see, I made him cry. Are you okay? Again?
You just need to beatbox. Ooh. What? Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Good.
Okay.
He tried.
Okay, can mommy let me sit back down now? ¿Quieres más chichi? He's like, don't play with me, Mom. Just give me that boobie. Yeah, I goof around. I totally digress. I project a lot. That's another thing we need to talk about is projection. In that when we're feeling a certain way, the people closest to us are going to get that. Okay? I used to smoke a lot. Like, I would be high a lot, honestly, and then I wouldn't think about it and something would shift and I'd be super creative. Another good way is to like write everything down. Journaling is a great coping mechanism. Basically we're gonna need a way. My question is what you're offering or what you are choosing to distract with or fill your time with, is it hurting or healing? Now, no judgment on any of that. You're the only one who can decide whether it's hurting you or healing you. It's also helpful to really tune in to your body, right? Like, for me, the biggest reason I quit smoking is because my lungs hurt. My lungs literally hurt. I couldn't take a deep breath without feeling a burning pain in my throat all the way down through my lungs. But I'm somebody who pays attention to my body, right? And I have all this education that teaches me about how it works, which I know is a privilege. So there's that, which is why I try to educate as much as possible. So yeah, does anybody have any questions about any of this, about coping mechanisms, about colonization and addiction? I'm gonna go back through and look through all these. I know you guys were writing stuff about my Hito because he's just darn cute. I love you too, Monique. Tito says que lindo. Thank you. I know Hito is hilarious. We are not treating mental health. We are treating trauma coping responses. Thank you very much. Yeah, it's interesting. Like, I do honor vocabulary that people are used to because that's helpful in defining something in order to have a mental grasp and then help it. I'm of the opinion and belief based on my work that mental and emotional illness is spiritual illness. Okay? Specifically when it comes to like being crazy, a lot of that has to do with, we could have a whole class on this, and I think I've taught things about this before. Susto. So in curanderismo, there's this idea of susto, that when you have an intense trauma in your life, what happens is you get a fright or a shock. And when you get susto, your spirit leaves your body. So imagine this happening over and over again. So when you've dealt with a lot of trauma, it's like your body isn't a safe place to be, so your spirit leaves. So then your body has empty space for other things to enter. So I've experienced pharmaceutical drugs, especially, what do they call them? Psychotropic drugs, as spirits. I experience drugs as spirits. So the spirit of cocaine is very different than the spirit of heroin, is very different than the spirit of alcohol, the spirits of alcohol. There's a reason why they call them spirits. So yes, mental health is a word, something that's used to explain a lot of way more nuanced, complicated, and historical spiritual traumas is what I believe, and what I've seen. Okay. That oxytocin high, right? I know. Yeah, baby. My mom did the same. Good. I'm glad your mom did the same, Tito. Totally feeling this. Before you got on earlier, I had an unpleasant conversation with my sister and thought I need a drink. Then I was like, no, I don't. Shut up. Well, and it's see, and so even that, like, you see the demonization that happens of your shadow self, or like even wanting, instead of being like, okay, Tito, child, self, love, why do you feel like you need a drink? You say, cállate, like, no, you don't. F you don't need a drink, right? There's like this combativeness that comes with ourselves, and that's also the colonial spirit. So what I tell my patients often is like, is it helping or is it healing, right? So what can you do that helps heal? Like maybe you can have some tea instead that will, like lemon balm, that'll calm your spirit. It's still a coping mechanism, but is it going to ultimately help you heal or like damage your liver, right? Oh, good. You did your mantra and you made dinner. Orale. Good job. Knowing the difference between coping and avoiding. I wonder if that's a question. I think they're the same. I think coping and avoiding are the same. Yeah. There was something else I was going to tell you. When we are coping, we are specifically not giving ourselves permission to go to that deep, dark shadow place. I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. Sometimes we might not be ready to go to that deep, dark shadow place. Sometimes it's not the space to go to that deep, dark shadow place. Sometimes it's probably safer for you to go have a smoke than blow up on somebody, right? But when you start to understand that it is coping, when you start to see it for what it is, as opposed to like, oh, I'm just addicted to XYZ, remember there's a reason behind the addiction, okay? With cannabis, figuring out how to use of medicine versus numbing, questioning this for myself. Keep questioning for yourself. I like to wonder about like how our ancestors used it, how indigenous peoples who are still non-colonized around the world might use visionary medicines, but I know that there's purpose and there's timing. It's not an everyday thing. And it's really easy to make things an everyday thing. Michael Pollan, who's a writer on food, wrote this book called Food Rules, and I think there's 36 or 37 rules. It's real fast, really easy read if you're somebody who's just starting out in the dietary, how do I heal myself with food thing. Michael Pollan, Pollen. And one of the food rules is keep treats as treats. And he goes and he talks about how back in the day to make a pie, it took so long, right? You had to gather the apples, you had to cut the apples, you had to season the apples, you had to bake the apples, you had to mill the wheat and, make it into flour and then wait for the chicken to hatch the egg, like all of the things. And then after all of these like days of planning or gathering for all of these ingredients, you spent a whole day making like a pie. So when you didn't eat 3 things of pie at once, the family got a little piece each, and it was this like beautiful celebration of a thing. I feel like when it comes to visionary medicines, when it comes to hallucinogens, when it comes to even alcohol, intention is everything, right? Nowadays, when you can go down the street to the store and there's some factory making 30,000 of the same things over and over, you forget like the work, the connection it takes to create that medicine. And that's part of what made it medicine, is the labor of not just you and your hands, of nature, of farms, of animals that went into creating that thing, right? Okay, go to bed. Many loves. Hi, Main Bay. So other coping mechanisms. So this is something I learned when I was in Chinese medicine school about face reading. If you have, like I do, an indented temple, it either means having an addictive personality and being very spiritually prone. So oftentimes people who, like, how many people do you know who were straight up addicts and beat their spouses, etc., are now born again Christians, right? And because like they like took one for the other. right? They like connect to spirit. Conversely, people who get strong spiritual messages and prophetic dreams and stuff might be very easily become addicts, because there's this closeness to the realms. Okay, Eshu is one of the Orisha, and he's depicted as standing on a crossroads, smoking a cigar and drinking alcohol. And that's because he walks the both worlds, right? So these things, these substances are doorways into the other realms. That's why they need to be respected. Okay, so if we're just doing them every day, that isn't respect. At the same time, are we actually being present with our lives, and are we actually listening to what we need to be listening to? Or are we distracting ourselves with, you know, tarot cards, right? Like there was a time in my life where I'm just like in the like my mid-20s, I'm like, oh, I would just sit and like journal and read tarot and smoke weed and like do all this stuff. And I'm like, oh, I'm so spiritual, but I wasn't really doing the spiritual work. Because the spiritual work is the hard shit. Okay, the ceremony is easy, y'all. And I tell my people, whoever comes to my ceremony, the ceremony is easy. And I learned this from my mother. You could dress up in all your white and wear your feathers and get your medicine and stay up all night and power and I'm ceremony, right? And then the next day you go home and you're tired and your kid screams and you blow up at him. That's not honoring the catalyst of the ceremony. The ceremony's purpose is to call in the intention, but then you live the ceremony in your life. Right? Like today, I got frustrated with my partner because I had a client and he was supposed to take the baby and it was late and I was like, And then when he left, I was like, damn it, Themia, you didn't have to feel like you have other tools to deal with your frustration. So even myself, who's been practicing and healing for a long time, like I still every day have to call myself out on actually, am I embodying what the fuck I believe? Or am I just spouting off out the mouth about it? It's hard, y'all. It is work. That's the work. The work isn't going and taking ayahuasca 7 times in a week or a month. That's easy. That's easy to drink some shit and have visions. That's not hard. The hard part is after you have the vision and you're tired and you're hungry, can you follow through with the message you were given from spirit? That's the hard part. Okay? Does anybody have any questions? How can we synergize with shadow self? A lot of different ways. You have to be willing to look at it. And that's what I've told a lot of people. I've gone live here before and told people that. Create space for yourself to be willing to see the ugly that exists in you. And that's like, in my experience, the difference between a toxic relationship and a non-toxic relationship is either just repeating toxic patterns on each other or being patient and willing and open enough to actually see the ways you're toxic too and check yourself about it. For example, you just always have to be present with your own self. For example, I was raised in a certain way, what I guess I would call hood. And there's like a way that I was raised to treat people, that my family, we all treat each other like by talking shit and kind of getting real like saying mean things. And my partner wasn't raised like that. So sometimes he'll be like, I don't appreciate the way you're talking to me. And I'm like, that's just how I talk. And then I have to stop and realize that hurts him, right? And that even if I can talk to my mom like that, because that's how we communicate, that's how we learn to communicate, that is a trauma response mechanism based on our colonial trauma that is not of service to our healing, because it keeps re-traumatizing. And then we say stuff like, why are you so sensitive? Then there's this gaslighting that happens. But the fact that like I can now, and it's taken me a while, stop myself before he even has to say anything and realize, oh, I'm sorry that came across like that. I'm still learning to check in with my emotions before I speak. I didn't mean to hurt your feelings. So that's what I'm talking about. Like when your shadow self comes when you don't know it because it's you, right? And when we give ourselves the space to look at it is when we begin to integrate it. So I've treated people where their darkness has shown up like an external entity, like something they caught off the street or a drug or something like that, but it's actually their own darkness that has like come back on them because they haven't done the work to integrate it. Okay, so it really is about sitting with our own pendejadas, our own angers, our own like rabia, our own vengeance, our own murderousness, because it exists in all of us. Dualidad, ometeo, yin and yang, it exists in us, right? So we have to be willing to see it and admit that shit and check ourselves. Okay, somebody says something else. Truth, mana, the work, walking in integrity in the day-to-day. It's tough stuff. I will always be a work in progress. I will never be done doing the work. It's a journey and not a destination. Thank you, sister. Yes, it's a journey and not a destination. Okay, ¿qué más? I'm so confused on how to start healing. I don't know what to do beyond journaling and prayer. So thank you for saying that. Let me see, what's your name? Hajira Things. Hi. Thank you for being here. Healing is a long ass process, okay? And I was even somebody who was raised with like hands-on healing and being a pasista and a seer in my line, and we still have mad ass colonial trauma and still act from really fucking wounded places often. And so there's always opportunity to heal. My healing path began when I was very young, but being introduced to Chinese medicine at 18 was really instrumental for me. And then honestly, the loverships I've had, I was in a long-term off and on relationship with a man I met in college. And I learned so much in the mirror of that relationship, and also in relationships that haven't worked out, like what you don't want, right? Like the ways toxicity shows up that you called unto you. But I found teachers and healers. So there have been different points in my life where I would get weekly healing, and like even at times where if it's the last fucking $40 in my bank account, I would spend it on an acupuncture treatment at a student shop. Or there's places you can go where there's community healing or people to talk to. I tell my patients often, or my clients or whatever, I don't know, the word patient, word client, it's weird. The people who come to me for my services, I tell them often, once you tell creator, tell the universe what you're looking for, then listen, because there will be signs. You'll be walking down the street and there'll be a purple light saying healing, and you're like, oh, and that's the place you need to go. Okay, so keep a lookout, but don't be afraid to ask for help. If creator wanted us to be here all by ourselves, we would be. But we are surrounded by hundreds of thousands of millions of people. I know COVID is a thing right now, and like follow your intuition, wear your mask, like do what you have to do, feel safe, get your essential thieves oil, eat your vegetables for your own immunological helpfulness. Don't go into hospitals if it's not absolutely necessary, and do your due diligence to keep yourself well and be considerate of those around you, especially in the high risk bracket. But follow your gut and choose your healing. Your healing will come to you if you seek it. What you seek seeks you. Thank you for saying that. I find cannabis helpful to tap into some big shadow work, at times too intense that I need a break because I can sit with my brain. I believe medicine can sometimes help open to create connections, balance. Yeah, it can. And you're the only one who really knows if you're abusing it. My personal belief is nothing that you use daily is that is mind altering is like the best in this society. But hey, I wasn't raised in some like non-broken lineage of visionary medics. Like, I don't know. So I encourage any of you watching this to follow your follow what calls you to learn about yourself and how you express and how you show up and how you heal yourself, because everybody's medicine looks different. Nobody's medicine should be the same. That's why Western medicine is not really great at healing anyone. Maybe at doing some things that can help you heal yourself if you change your diet and you know, like are bedridden because you had a surgery for like a while, then there's other shit that shifts, right? But you are capable of following the healing that says yes for you. And maybe that is a surgery, but I don't know because I don't live in your body. So anything I say is really about, hey, you check yourself and learn yourself so you can learn how to heal yourself. And the signs will be apparent if you learn how to listen, which takes allowing yourself to trust yourself. And that's a whole other thing that we could talk about, like what colonialism left. Okay, there's so much here, guys. Maybe I am talking out of my ass. Just sharing. Thank you. Okay, I've been trying to do lots of healing, have been doing it for quite some time now, and have started doing shadow work as well, but I feel like I'm not doing enough. There's big stuff blocking me. So healing is a journey, just like Comadre said. Like, you're not going to just all of a sudden be healed. Like, all the time it took for you to have that abusive childhood, all the time it took for you to realize you were being gaslit by your partner for those 10 years, like, that is time that you're gonna have to like unravel that, you know. Even like when I'm healing someone or trying to heal someone, like 1 in 100 times ish, maybe you put your hands and they're like, oh my god, it's gone, you know. More than often you have to come back, you have to keep your healing, you have to change your diet, you have to implement lifestyle shifts every day that work towards your healing. Natural medicine is a long run. It's a long haul. It's slowly giving yourself what you need and learning what you need at the same time. I need guidance. Okay, so then that's the other thing. Look for guidance where it happens, but also no rush. So that's another thing colonialism has done, is made us believe that we're supposed to be doing. Sometimes your healing looks like going the fuck to sleep. I also fall prey to this colonial do, especially with my educational and academic background and trying to heal the hood. I actually, because I lost so much blood during my birth, and I go, and I will, I have a tiny little kitchen that gets messy really fast, and sometimes I'm like, oh, I don't want to go. Anyways, I started getting blood deficient disease over the last like 2 weeks, and then 2 days ago, so I started taking some Chinese herbs and eating more red meat and doing things dietarily that would help build my blood, including making like molasses heavy things. But then I literally slept for 2 days. My partner took my baby and they went to the museum. They did all kinds of fun stuff, and I just slept for 2 days, and I'm better. It's not all the way better, but it's way better. It's like if it was like at an 8 or a 9 or a 10, it's now at like a 0.5 or a 1. I also went and got treatment from my favorite Charmaine Bay sorceress, and then I sought out like treatment for myself. You know, I did some massages, and I'm taking Matriz y Concha. Like, I am constantly in a state of self-reflection so that I don't do stuff that isn't helpful. But I do stuff that isn't helpful because I'm a fucking human. So you also have to realize that, like, you're gonna be human, and sometimes being out of alignment and out of balance with being human is part of the balance, because you can't be perfect. And if we try to make ourselves perfect, then that's when we get rigid, and that's when we get stuck, and that's when we don't heal. Okay, so be compassionate with yourself and keep your mind open. And also, maybe the answer isn't do more, maybe the answer is do less, literally. Okay. Yes, rage is my thing. You gotta let it out. Pillows are really good. I'm the same way with my partner. Coming from a broken family, I'm doing therapy, but it's not helping. The meditation and journaling isn't taking me far. Still a lot of pain and anger. So what I say with pain and anger, since it came up, you have to embody it. I have done, like, when I get triggered, I'll like go and beat up pillows, literally, and like get it out of my body. I've also put on music and like said a prayer with the intent to release anger and just like stomped. And if you think about ancestrally, there were all of these movements that meant certain things, like birthing or asking or growing or fire or wind, right? That embody certain emotions, and we would dance them that would help move. If you look at Tai Chi, there are certain movements that are supposed to be meant to for certain organs, and different organs house different emotions. So that the answer to that is really literally embodiment. Like, you go to a kickboxing class, I mean COVID, but still you can do it yourself. You can kick, you know. I dance, I angry dance. Zapatear is really fun for angry dancing, like with the tacones, you know, that's really fun, like flamenco, making your face really mean. Practice in your body of releasing, super helpful. Integrating our shadow self, yes. I so appreciate your wisdom and share, and thank you, Thimi. You're super welcome. If you guys feel called to reciprocate, my Cash App is Muse Medicina. My PayPal is EUTIMIA, eutimia@gmail.com, and my Venmo is eutimia-montoya. Anything you can offer is greatly appreciated. Share this information, share it far, share it wide, and mostly do your work. Do your work, do your work, do your work, do your work. Thank you. Yeah, gaslighting, man. Do you do consultation, herb support, self-healing? Yes, my website, or I have a link tree, and you can get a, what's it called? Consultation. So now I only have one thing that I offer online for personals, and it's a half-hour consult for anything, and I could or could not use cards, and it just depends on what you need. Spirit guides me to help you the best way I know how in that moment. Oh, hey, Joshua. Cancel. Okay, let's see. So helpful for validating my journey. Thank you for sharing. You're very welcome. Matthew left. How do I help my 3 sons understand the relationship with the trauma of being removed from their biological mother and growing up Black in their very who are family community? Thank you for you. There's also surrendering to the great mystery. Okay, so in some indigenous traditions, the God is known as the great mystery. Some shit we're just not supposed to know. People are validated based on the fact that they were born. Okay, different types of people go through a lot of different things. Like, there's no such thing as Puritanism. Okay, so there's trauma, but honestly, the truth is you can't heal anyone else from their trauma. You have to lead them to the water and hope that they drink. Show up for them in all of their states. Don't shame people for feeling the way that they feel. Just offer them support. Say I don't know what to do. I'm sorry. I didn't know. I didn't mean to. If I caused you pain, I didn't know. But I'm here for you, and I love you. I love you unconditionally. If that means you're angry, how can I help? How can I help? Okay, so much of people's healing is just honestly honoring them where they're at. Okay, and that's why it's really nice to go to a healer, because somebody can show up and they can just blah, and the person in front of you should be like non-judgmental and be able to hold space for their beingness. That's the whole plática point, the heart-to-heart discussion. You can just hold space for somebody in their brokenness. That stuff about rigidity stopping healing is on point. Thinking about how as a kid I tried to control these things that I could because there was so much that I couldn't in a violent home. Yeah. And we have to like realize that that's just real. Like, I didn't realize that I used dress up as a coping mechanism until one of my friends moved in with me and she started wearing my clothes, and I was like, where's my shirt? And then I'm like tripping on myself. I'm like, why am I so upset that she wore my shirt? Because if she, like, I would let her borrow it. But then I realized that playing dress up was my road of escapism, and it was what I could control. Like, clothes, I knew where my clothes were. So when somebody else was in my stuff, and like, even if I had a messy pile, I knew that shirt was in that messy pile. It was a sense of control. But when I didn't know, I had like a whole come to terms with my childhood trauma just based on the fact that I couldn't find my shirt. I'm like, why am I so upset about this? And then she actually talked it out with me. So that's another thing, and then I'll leave you guys, is the people you surround yourself with. There are people who really do want to hold space for you in your healing. There are friends who will call you the fuck out if you're the one being a problem, and you should thank them. But there are also people who aren't here for your healing, and they might be the ones you love the most. But if you are trying to heal, you need to give yourself permission to choose your healing, which sometimes means not choosing other things like your parents or your siblings or your baby's parents. And that's hard. And you're the only one who knows. Okay? Trust that gut instinct. There's a whole other discussion on whether you're trusting gut instinct or trauma response. That's not for tonight. So basically, to sum up, addiction and coping come from colonial trauma that manifests as childhood and ancestral trauma. Whenever we are reaching for something to help us deal with our emotional state, there's two questions you want to ask yourself. Is this hurting me, or is this helping me heal? Very simple. Not easy, simple. Is this hurting me, or is this helping me heal? And those might be very nuanced. You know, it might be like right now, smoking a joint is way better than punching that motherfucker in the face. So pick your battles, okay? And so much more. If you want to consult with me, I charge $77. I can work with you if you need it, but I also highly encourage you to invest in yourself and in your healing. You can find that link in the bio. I teach classes here and there. I give lives here and there. You are always welcome to ask me questions, and I can make a video specifically tailored to that, because most likely the collective is going through something as well. You can Venmo me at eutimia-montoya. You can PayPal me at eutimia@gmail.com, EUTIMIA, and you can use Muse Medicina at Cash App me. Any amount is great, and I appreciate you. And I do collective readings every Thursday for the collective tarot readings. And now my mama and my mother just got on Instagram. She's Chicana Historian, and she is a survivor of the Chicano Civil Rights Movement, an educator. She's done all kinds of things, and she is the danzante, and she is a cantadora, and she does all kinds of wonderful things, and she taught me lots of the things I know. And we're going to start doing a weekly Healing Histories live, and that is going to be pretty much anybody who wants to know about American history outside of a white lens. Will be really good, and there'll be a lot more of that coming up. And yeah, I'm here, so you can DM. If you have anything health related, I would really prefer you either schedule a consult or email me, eutimia@gmail.com. Please don't send me pictures of sores and DMs or anything like that. But you can talk to me about what is good for you. Okay. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening to me. I many blessings on the healing path. Be compassionate with yourself. Be compassionate with yourself. Mars and Aries right now is fucking with everybody's flow. If you're angry, that's about right. Compassion with yourself first, because when you're compassionate with you, you can be compassionate with the world, and God knows we need it. Órale pues. Many blessings. Have a beautiful evening. Nos vemos. Ciao.